And so now you're wondering, who is she and why should I have to listen to some teenager that goes to this high school? I am a member of the digital generation. And with the invention of the internet and everything that came along with it, we were presented with a really big problem. Our existence is split in between two communities, the one that we have in person and then the one that we have online. They each have their pros and cons, but what a lot of people fail to realize is that when you bring them together, you're able to create something a lot more beautiful than you ever thought you could. So I'm going to explore today the usage of social media and community involvement in order to maximize your impact before you leave this earth. So I'm going to do that by telling my own personal story. When you're young, adults look at you and ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? When I was younger, I would look up and puff out my chest and square back my shoulders, and I would say confidently, I want to be a cowgirl. And it was probably because I had like this face with horses, but also because the walkway leading to my doorway had a mirror. And on the mirror's border had paintings of horses on them with all different patterns and colors. And even though I was too short to look into the mirror, every day I would pass by it and admire the horses and touch them before I would strut my way out to school. Now, I've grown a little bit taller, I've grown past the horses, and now I can see myself in the mirror. And when I look at myself in the mirror, I can tell you about my physical features, I can describe my eye bags, but I can't tell you who I really am. Because the thing is that with this generation, we're beginning to lose ourselves. I am one student in a sea of 3,000 that traverse this campus every single day. And I can tell you that we're all a little bit lost and misguided, going in the wrong direction. We're drowning in SAT scores and ACT scores and essays and sleepless nights and AP classes and extracurriculars. And don't forget to keep up your social media image because that's really important too. When I look at myself in the mirror, when we all look at ourselves in the mirror, what do we see? We see tired eyes. And we see faces that can't handle this stress anymore. We don't see ourselves because we're too busy trying to define ourselves so that the College Board accepts us and that we get into that nice four-year university so that we can get a good education and then have a nice family, right? And so it's become hard for us to locate what our voices are because we're too busy trying to adjust them so that the colleges like us, right? But like I said, we're the digital generation, and so we've tried to find a solution. And so that, to us, is social media. We find solace in the fact that we are able to create infinite identities that we can edit, delete. We can change who we are. We can mold who we want to be with the click of a button, and it's just that easy. But with Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat and Instagram and the list goes on, there are just so many platforms and so many opportunities to create so many identities and so many voices. How do I tell which voice is mine? How do I know who I really am? How do I distinguish my online person from my real person? And so even though we're trying to find ourselves in social media, we still get pretty lost. Luckily, when I stepped foot onto this campus, I was able to find an organization called Interact. Interact stands for International Action. And what it does is it's a club that has community service events and fundraisers that have a common goal to empower change in our world. Seems like a big thing for teenagers to do, but the thing is that we're doing it. By being a part of Interact, we're given a voice. We're able to find ourselves, who we really are. We know that by doing these acts of service, our voices matter. What we say and what we do directly affect people in our communities, but also internationally. Interact District 5170, as mentioned earlier, is in Northern California. The thing is that our Interact District is the largest in the world. There are over 100 clubs and thousands of interactors, thousands of lost teenagers that have somehow found their voice by doing service. And that's pretty cool. But the thing is that we're really spread apart, right? We go from Alameda to Hollister. That's a pretty hefty distance to cover. And that's a heck of a lot of people that you're gonna try to connect with within 4 years of high school. But we don't mind that, because we're a family. And I say that, and you guys may look and you say, well, you guys are just a bunch of different high schoolers from all these different schools. Like, how does that even happen? Like I said, we're the digital generation, meaning we know how to use social media to make our connections meaningful. We don't have to physically be there for someone for them to know that we're there for someone. When I think about this, I think about my friend Toby. Toby doesn't live that far away, and one day he shared with us our story. Like a lot of us, he had a tough time in high school, but maybe Toby had a tough time more like most of us. He dug himself into a rut, and he couldn't pull himself back out. He had fallen into deep depression, and at this point, he couldn't hear his own voice anymore. All he could hear was the depression in his head saying, "You're not worthy to be on this planet anymore. What you say doesn't matter. You're not providing any worthy contributions. Why do you even deserve to be here?" And so he listened to that voice in his head, and he reached into the cabinet, and he pulled out some pills, and he put it in his hand. And he looked into his hand, and he thought, maybe this is my solution. Maybe this is my solution. But then he looked at his palm again, and he saw the pills, and then he saw us. He said that when he looked at the pills, he was able to stop himself because he thought about us, the interactors of District 5170, all 7,000 of them, ranging from Alameda to Hollister, and he knew when he thought of us that his voice mattered because he was a part of the roar that we were creating, because we wanted to change this world, and he thought about that, and he thought about us, and he thought about how we were there for him. And so he put down the pills, and he said, maybe I'll try for another day. And so when we think of Toby, we think about how the bonds that we've created through community service can be strengthened by social media. I said that community service gives us a voice in the world. So why doesn't social media? They're basically the same thing, right? You're in this big sea of people, and you're all striving to contribute to the conversation because you want to have a say in what the world looks like. You want to mold the world into something that you want to live in. And so when finding service in our communities and finding service on our cell phones, we're able to make incredible contributions to our community that we could have never imagined. Interact District 5170 has, over the past couple of years, raised $600,000 to international organizations. What we've done has directly impacted people worldwide, and that's us. We're doing that, and we're just a bunch of teenagers. We are the digital generation. We have social media, and that should be our asset, that should be our tool. We are the digital media generation, and we have a big problem. But actually, I think we have a big advantage because we know how to use these tools to create the biggest possible change in our communities. The solution is in your hands. The solution is in your hands. It's up to you to use it. Thank you.